All right. Thank you so much, Mrs. West, for setting up the link. My time is showing 6 o'clock, so we're going to go on and get started. I just want to take this opportunity to thank the 15, 16, 17 people who showed up on the Zoom meeting tonight. You know, this has been just an atypical time, not only within the schools, within our families, but within the world, around the entire world. And we know that there are so many influences that are affecting us mentally, emotionally, physically during this time. And so, our wonderful, wonderful School Improvement Council, as we were brainstorming goals for the year, we talked a lot about that, about the importance of making sure that our students and our families were simply okay during this time. And so we certainly want to thank them for their foresight in planning this forum in collaboration with our wonderful support staff who are here this evening as well. And will introduce themselves or will be introduced. But at this time, I would like to turn it over to our phenomenal, phenomenal, phenomenal School Improvement Council chairperson, Mrs. Faith Sheehan, and she's going to tell you a little bit more about the goal for this evening and give us further direction. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Hill. My name is Faith Sheehan, for any of those who are joining and don't know me very well. I've been with the school improvement team for a few years now, and this is our third, I think, trying to attempt our third year maybe with these parent forums, or at least a year and a half, school year and a half. And we just really felt that this was the appropriate time to talk about some of these things. I'm apologize because I'm not like overly technical savvy when it comes to the Zoom meetings and stuff. But I look forward to our guest speaker, Ms. Spangler, and I'm sorry, I'm having
Key, Mrs. Key, our social worker.
Thank you so much. And I think that if anyone has any questions along the way after they give their discussion, are we just going to have them join the chat, or do we want them to go ahead and just unmute? Given the number of people, I wasn't really sure about how we wanted to handle any questions.
We may be able to play it by ear if there are things that you think of as we're going along. Perhaps you can plug it into the chat box. And, you know, once it's over, we'll see what kind of happens or what discussions take place. I think that'll work. Thank you.
Yep. I kind of was just hoping for a little bit, you know, get some perspective from our staff on you know, the emotional impact and the social impact that we have with our children right now, and then just kind of open it up for a discussion afterwards was kind of the hope and the intent for this. So thank you, everybody.
All right. So at this time, I guess I'll introduce again. For those who may not know, we have a phenomenal school counselor and her cat, Mrs. Tanya Spangler. And we also have a phenomenal school social worker who has just worked very closely with our Bookman Road families and families across the district for that matter during this time of the pandemic. Her name is Mrs. Coretta Key. Thank you. And just excellent resources, human resources that we have at our school who have just been a wonderful support to our families. So at this time, we are going to go on and turn it over to Mrs. Spangler and Mrs. Key, and then Hopefully we'll get some more direction after hearing from them if there are any questions that might arise during that time. Thank you so much again for being here this evening.
All right. Can everyone hear me okay? Awesome. Always like to check for that just in case. Well, good evening, guys. I'm so excited that you're here. Thank you for spending your time with us this evening. You could be doing a lot of other things, but you chose to do this, so thank you. That means a lot. I really want to start out by just saying we're going to be talking about social emotional health, and really what that translates into is our mental health. So you can kind of be looking at that and thinking about that interchangeably. I also will say I have 2 cats and they love to show up on all of my Google Meets. And so I apologize in advance. They will probably be moving around. The kids love it, but you know, I'll try to keep them to being as little as a distraction as possible. I'm going to bring up my presentation and kind of just talk through it a little bit, hopefully. I will also say I'm a little more familiar with Google Meets, of course, obviously, and Zoom, not as much. So, you know, I appreciate your patience. All right, Arlie, I have a message that says host disabled participant screen sharing.
1 second.
Okay.
See, no, it's okay. On my end, I had 1 participant can share at a time. So we're no Zoom experts, y'all. Like Ms. Spangler said, we are Google Meet people.
Yeah.
So let's see if you can share now.
Okay.
And if not, I can share your presentation. There we go. We can see your screen.
And you're awesome. Woo!
Yep.
Yay. Okay. Here we go. Oh, sorry. I'm moving my little photos of you guys over and I'm getting ahead of myself. I apologize. So, first of all, I want to kind of go over the definition of what social emotional learning is. And we can think of that as social emotional health too, but we kind of call it at school, we call it social emotional learning, or SEL. So when you see that SEL abbreviation, that's what that stands for. But it's basically the way we, you know, we teach children how to understand it and manage their emotions, set goals. We encourage them and nurture that skill of showing empathy for others, that perspective taking, learning how to take on another person's perspective, learning how to manage positive relationships, and making responsible decisions. We work through that problem solving steps with them so they can learn how to do that from beginning to end. A really big thing that I'm focusing on right now, and really always, is understanding and managing emotions. And the cool thing about this is that oftentimes these things overlap. So when you are looking at one, you're going to look at many of them. They really do overlap nicely. When you move, there we go. When you're looking at the core competencies, these are the 5 major areas that we are, the big umbrella areas that we're going to be covering, that I cover all through the year. I try to help teachers look at these 5 areas. I try to help parents as needed to look at these 5 areas, so everything can fit under these 5 core competencies: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, responsible decision making. Right now, typically in a typical year, what I would do is have a whole lot of activities that would go underneath one of these big umbrella competencies. This year, what I'm doing is really trying to teach everyone the language of SEL. We've been doing SEL forever, but I want to teach the language of it. So we have taken a long haul. So we are covering these 5 areas across the school year. We've done self-awareness and self-management, and right now we're working on social awareness. I really like to plug in self-management in just about everything I do because it's so important at the elementary level. And what I talk to children about regarding self-management, and two, you can take a deep dive into any of these 5 categories and you could spend like months in any one of these categories. So this year we are kind of taking a brief little dive into each one, just because I want them to understand and learn the vocabulary and really build up an emotional vocabulary too. So I really focus in on that self-management, and what we do with that is we're focusing on big emotions. I talk to students all the time about how we all have comfortable feelings that we enjoy having, like joy, happiness, surprise, calmness, right? Peacefulness. But we also have other, and those can be big feelings, but they're pretty easy to manage because we enjoy them. But on the other side, we also have big feelings like sadness, anger, frustration, anxiety. And those are very normal to have. We all have them. And I teach children that it is perfectly normal to have all emotions, no matter what they are. They serve a purpose. But sometimes those big feelings that we feel that are uncomfortable, we need some help. We need some strategies. So we talk a lot about how to manage those big feelings with coping strategies. And I try to offer them a selection of strategies to sort of think about what that, what have you done before that are strategies. Sometimes we use strategies we don't even realize that we're actually using strategies. So I try to have them sort of think about that. All right. Okay, so we're going to I apologize. I'm also kind of moving I'm moving things around on my screen so that I can see different parts. So I apologize if I look like I'm like all over the place. So what is the significance of all this? Well, the importance is because it's how we kind of interact with ourselves and with others in the world. And that's a big deal. If we can learn really a good foundation in social emotional health, then we're going to be pretty successful in life. It's a very important skill set that we're always establishing, nurturing, building across an entire lifetime. And I always try to help students understand that too. We're always working on that. So why do we want to do this? We want to do it because it really helps build a positive self-image. It helps us figure out how to work with others, to be social in a positive way. It helps us because people who have really strong social emotional skills tend to have fewer problems, and the problems they do have, they're able to tackle. They're more resilient. We see students with higher SEL levels. They're usually a little higher academically. They have better attendance, and they're better prepared for the future. All right. Intrapersonal skills. All right. So we also break down SEL into intrapersonal skills and interpersonal skills. And these 8 things, I usually do a whole lot of activities whether it's in the classroom setting, whether it's in small group settings, or in one-on-one with individual students. These are the things that we're focusing on. And again, they overlap a lot. So this is what we focus on every year. And one thing that I really want to really encourage folks to understand is that, you know, how we work on our mental health and our social emotional health, how we do that in a pandemic is exactly the same way that we would in normal everyday life before pandemic. So there might be some pieces, and we're going to be pulling some things out. For example, two of the things that we pulled out that we know the pandemic is going to bring on is feelings of anxiety. So, you know, so we will be focusing a little bit about that, a little extra, and also loss, because of course we've had, you know, sickness and some folks who've experienced death in their family because of the pandemic. So those are the two things that we're going to kind of pull from. But the basic foundation of how we would manage our mental health and our social emotional health is the same no matter what. So all of these pieces are important. And sometimes I think we kind of just forget some of that foundational stuff, how to take care of ourselves with nutrition and sleep, and just finding things that bring us joy. So we're going to be kind of talking a little bit about that along the way as well. All right. Coretta, if you would like to.
Yes, good evening. Hello, everyone. I hope you all can hear me very clearly. So as Tanya just spoke on intrapersonal skills, I'm going to be speaking on interpersonal skills, the skills that we need through social learning to help us to grow and continue to mature as we move forward. So as you can see, that 85% of our communication is nonverbal. Right now, due to the pandemic, we're not able to see everybody's beautiful smiles and the facial gestures that we normally would see because of the mask. So now is very hard. So we have to be very cognizant of watching eyes, hand gestures, body languages. They say a lot. If there's a communication through text, just kind of reading the tone of the text, as well as the exclamation points or the emojis that they put in there. Those are all languages that we're using to express how we feel. Also, we must keep in mind and be very cognizant is your tone of voice, the level of tone that you're using. If I'm speaking very lowly and sad, lowly, just letting you know something may be wrong. Or if I'm extremely excited and you hear all the thrill in my voice, that definitely gives off a signal to let you know the communication that's being exhibited. Also, listening is definitely a skill. We must think, you know, we just assume that everybody, just because I speak, you heard me, you got it. No, that's not always the case. Listening is definitely a skill. It's the ability to accurately receive and interpret messages. So being able to practice those listening skills and be able to, you practice and you be able to deliver is important. You know, everyone knows, we know that work ethic is very hard work that we like to share. Accountability is just setting responsibility for our actions. The students being able to problem solve whenever there's a difficult or complex issue that may arise, be able to use those skills to resolve those issues. Here, sometimes students may have some conflictual parts of this with assertiveness versus aggressiveness. And we all know that assertiveness is just being adamant and being strong and standing up for your values or morals, versus aggressiveness may lead to threatening behaviors or bullying. And collaboration, students being able to come together, and especially during this time, we're all in it together and working together. Next slide. Okay, definitely now during the pandemic and with the new strand that has approached South Carolina, all of our anxieties have heightened at this point for students as well as for adults. With all the uncertainties, the fears, the hand washing, the social distances, and the mask, it is definitely a very hard time for myself in particular as well. Just being cognizant of how close we are, wiping down areas, washing my hands, just all of those things. So with that, for us, just imagining how that feels as an adult, how does this feel to our students? especially the ones who are not able to verbalize or articulate things, the feelings of anxiety that they're having and not knowing that it's actually anxiety. And as you see before us, children naturally experience a certain amount of anxiety in their daily life, which they do. And as listed before, we have the statistics of what happens when they exhibit anxiety. Like 40% of the children have separation anxiety when it's hard for them to detach from a parent or guardian. For example, I have a student at my other school who mom gives her lollipops every morning. One day she dropped her jacket and all the lollipop sticks and wrappers came out. And I was like, oh, I get it. Go ahead to class. I'll throw it away for you. She literally almost had a fit. I didn't understand at the time, but what she explained was that she explained that's the last thing her mom had given her. What if something happened to my mom until the next time I see her again? I have this to hold on to. So it was that that separation, which you and I may have just thrown it away, which for her, that was what she had to hold and to keep until the next time she see her mom. So a lot of kids experience the separation anxiety, as well as 40% of the children ages 6 to 12 have concerns that trouble them. A lot of that is peer relationships, developing those peer relationships, and also satisfying us as their parent, as well as their teachers, making sure their grades are right where they need to be, or participating or performing well in a club or extracurricular activity with the anxiety. Also, we must keep in mind that anxiety and depression relates hand in hand. Those two kind of complement each other. Not good to say, but it does. So just for the information, sometimes when a person exhibiting anxiety, they do sometimes also display depressive symptoms as well. Okay. Next. All right. So before us, we have some actual symptoms or signs that are exhibited in the classroom that are anxiety symptoms. But also, let's keep in mind that when anxiety is heightened, here are some other physical anxiety symptoms that you may also become aware of as well, even if it may happen to you personally, your own child, or a student within your classroom. When a person is very fatigued, often fatigue, that's also a sign of anxiety. Irritability. Anxiety can cause a person to be irritable. Muscle tension. A lot of times their muscles may tense, or as an adult, you may have tightness in your chest. You may feel that you might be having a heart attack or indigestion, but sometimes it's actually anxiety from the muscle tension. Difficulty concentrating, restlessness, unsatisfying sleeping, sweating, trembling or shaking, increased heart palpitations, and definitely sensation of shortness of breath or heavy breathing or choking. Also, that we must keep in mind is that anxiety is a false alarm that goes to the brain, and it tells the brain, danger, 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 and your body tends to respond and to react. So just imagine we all should be in our homes, and if someone was trying to enter your home that wasn't invited and they were breaking into your home, your body is telling your mind it's danger, and your body is going to respond. You may tense, you may have sweaty palms, you may, can't move, you may freeze because we're frightened at the time. So those are some of the behaviors, those are some of the symptoms that are exhibited because anxiety tells the body it's an alarm, and it's a false alarm to the brain, and the body tends to react. So with that, you have to deflect and change it. And you have to think of things that make you happy, that's more pleasurable, that is very gratifying to you. Me, I'm a very silly, jokey person. So I always think if I ever experience anxiety, and when I do, because I do, I think of something that made me laugh, the silliest thing ever that makes me smile. So if I'm smiling and laughing, my brain is going to say, okay, Coretta clearly is not in danger because she's laughing. She shouldn't be responding this way. But it actually helps you to calm down, and you can start breathing through it. And also, as you feel that you may start tense, because you have warning signs before the anxiety actually persists. But when you start feeling those signs or becoming in tune with the signs that you may have for anxiety, learning how to breathe through that and recognizing to kind of decrease the intensity of the anxiety when it happens. Okay. Here are some things, some little tidbits of the do's and don'ts with anxiety. The student or individual that you may be assisting, help them manage the anxiety, not to eliminate it. Just learning how to manage it is what's key. Breathing, we all say, oh, just breathe, but it's really long, slow, inhale, exhale, deep breathing. Don't avoid things. just because they make a child anxious. You still want to introduce, you still want to share, you still want to have dialogue, still have the child to participate in that activity, because learning how to manage it will help them to cope when they're introduced to that particular activity. Express positive but realistic expectations. Respect the feeling, because you want to identify and recognize the feeling, but don't give all the power to the anxiety, to that particular emotion. You want to give the power to the ability of being able to manage the anxiety. Don't ask leading questions. Is this test going to make you anxious? Of course, we're all anxious about a test. I am. I'm fearful of standardized tests. So yes, so no questions. You want to say something like, you're going to do well. I believe in you. I know you got this. We're looking forward to your outcome of your test scores. You're going to do well. Don't reinforce the child's fears. Listen to the tone of voice, as I spoke on earlier. The voice level really, really says a lot. Just listen to their sound of their voice. Encourage your child to tolerate the anxiety. Try to keep the anticipatory period short. So just kind of staying calm and relaxed leading up to the event that they may be anxious about. Think things through with your student or child. Just kind of, running down the agenda of what may happen and transpire so they'll be prepared. Also, try to model healthy ways of handling anxiety. Again, deep breathing, taking time to process what's going to happen, looking at the agenda and how the child should or could possibly respond to what's before them. Next. Also, my feelings chart. Having your child or student to say how they're actually feeling. Saying I'm good or I'm okay or I'm straight. No, that doesn't tell me anything, because my good may not be your good. My straight may not be your straight. But being able to actually identify, am I excited? Am I sad? Am I interested? Or am I bored? Am I jealous? Just whatever it is, being able to use the emotional vocabulary and being able to articulate exactly how you're feeling. The teachers have been encouraged within the classroom to use this with their students so the students can be able to actually recognize and learn their emotions, because with our littles, they don't always know how they feel. But if they see this picture, they may can identify the expression that they're feeling amongst the character spaces. They may be able to say, oh, I'm proud, or, oh, I feel worried, but not, without having the exhibit, they might not be able to articulate that for us. Okay.
Thank you, Coretta. Yeah, and to piggyback on that, I use a feelings chart with students all the time. It's a great thing for anyone to use. Like, it's a great thing for even folks at home, parents to use to do check-ins. It doesn't have to be daily, but periodically. It also builds that emotional vocabulary. What I have found over the years, when you ask a student, well, how did that make you feel? They might come to me with some issue, some problem. Maybe they had a conflict with a peer. And when I ask, how does that make you feel? A student who is pretty knowledgeable about, they're reflective, they have a feelings vocabulary, they'll be able to tell me, oh, that made me mad, or that made me frustrated, or that made me really sad. But students who may not have as an extensive emotional vocabulary may tell me more what they want to do. It's, oh, well, if it's an angry feeling, they'll say something like, I wanted to hit them. And then I have to teach them, well, that's what you want to do. Let's go back to this feelings chart. Let's pick out which feeling were you feeling when that happened. And it just builds that emotional vocabulary so that there's a lot of power in being able to name what you're feeling. It's a very foundational thing before you can really develop good strategies and positive, ways of dealing with things. You got to know how it is that you're actually feeling. So that brings me to my thermometer, my feelings thermometer, and you can fill in any feeling here. So I use it a lot as an anger thermometer, but you could use it as an anxiety thermometer, a sadness thermometer, however you want it, or happiness thermometer. Too, it doesn't have to be an uncomfortable feeling. It could be something positive. But I use a version of this in my room when I see students, and I usually have it up on my board and just reference to it all the time, because there's just a lot of opportunities to bring that up. And we talk about the different, how big that feeling gets, between feeling calm at the bottom up to annoyed to frustrated, and then on to, anger. And we talk a little bit about, how after you kind of teach them this thermometer, you can ask them students like, well, let's rate on a scale 1 to 5, how big do you think your feeling was? Or how big do you think your problem was, rather? And then talk about, well, how big was your reaction on a scale 1 to 5? And then talk to them about, our level of problem and our level of reaction should be equitable. And what does that look like? What are some examples? Always use examples and models. And so they kind of get an idea. And that really helps them to understand, let's apply this to the thing that you're going through right now, whatever that may be. And it helps them just, if we're doing it in a calm manner, it helps them kind of see how maybe sometimes we give an overreaction. We might give, a level 5 reaction to a level 2 problem. And okay, so that tells us something. That's information. What do we do with that? Let's figure out some strategies, some ways that we could help calm ourselves down, some self-calming strategies. And it could be breathing, slow breathing. I call it soup bowl breathing with the young students. So we practice smelling the soup, blowing the soup cool. We do that several times. For the older students, I use little video clips where there might be a shape that kind of slowly moves out and moves in, and they breathe to it and things like that. So we just talk about strategies. How do you self-calm? Because we have to kind of step back and self-calm a little bit to be able to give that pause and then learn how to give a more level 2 response to a level 2 problem. And then this is a great opportunity, a great tool to teach, what happens when we give a level 5 reaction to a level 2 problem. We make it a lot worse oftentimes. And it's also a great opportunity to share how, even us adults do that too. This is not just a kid thing, every now and again, I'll give a level 5 response to a level 2 problem too. It's something that we're always working on, no matter how old we are. So this is just a great tool for anybody, whether, I'm working with a student, teachers, parents. And this is a great series that I wanted to share with you guys too. It's the Little Spot of series by Diane Albert. And I just can't speak highly enough about this great series. And I guess technically it's probably geared towards the younger student, maybe, K through 2, 3. But I think this is, I have found a lot of things that are they're slotted for a younger grade level that my 5th graders still love to pieces. Even my 5th graders still love, stuffed animals and puppets and things like that too. So, a good book is a good book, no matter how old you are. You can enjoy it. So this series is it's the Little Spot of, and there's tons of them. There's like the little spot of anger, little spot of anxiety, little spot of kindness, little spot of happiness, and it just goes on. And this is a great one, a peaceful spot. So it talks about being peaceful. But this is just a great series, and I can't speak too highly of it. It's just awesome, and it gives a lot of good strategies and breaks down emotions to children in such a phenomenal way. So it's a good series. And the cool thing is you don't even really have to buy them. You can Google them, and you can Google the read alouds and access them just right on the internet. So that's also something that I've shared with my younger grade levels, kindergarten and 1st right now. So I'm having them kind of work through that series.
Okay. So now, gratitude. during this time of COVID-19, it's a great time to reflect of what we're grateful for. So many have lost so many things, their homes, their jobs, without food, clothing, because parents are unable to afford those things because someone in the home has lost their job because of COVID or is ill and haven't been able to recover. So now is a great time to have, as well as us and our students, to reflect on thankfulness and gratitude activity. Just kind of thinking of someone you are grateful for or somewhere you are grateful for. Just taking that moment just to think and just stay calm and just relaxing. And also just remembering that gratitude is the quality of being thankful, readiness to show appreciation and kindness to others. Also, I like to share with my students when I'm working with them as well as families, especially now, we always say, I have to go do the laundry or I have to go grocery shopping. No, I get to. It's an honor. I get to because everybody doesn't. I get to go do the laundry. I get to go cook a meal for my family. I get to go to work tomorrow morning. So just keep that in mind, that things that we take for granted or just get very complacent, but just remember to express gratitude and kindness to others, especially during this time as we try to take care of ourselves during the pandemic. Tanya?
And this is an automatic thoughts strategy that I use with students all the time. I actually have a whole lesson on it called ants. So automatic negative thoughts, ants. So we learn how to squish ants. And really it's all about getting students to be more aware of their thinking. What are their thoughts? A lot of times it's our thoughts about something. It's not really the situation that we're in messes us up and gets us stuck. It's the thoughts that we're having about the situation that we're in that gets us stuck. So there's a lot of power in writing something down. So I have students write down, what is their negative thought about whatever particular thing they're going through that they're struggling with. And then we reframe it to a more manageable thought. I don't really like, some people will call it positive, will change it from a negative thought to a positive. And there is room for that, but I don't always like using the term positive thought because, that kind of gives the feel like, oh, well, everything's supposed to always be, roses and unicorns and it's not. So I like to think of it as more like, let's reframe this to a more manageable thought. And we kind of take the sting out of it. And it kind of helps students decompress. And so sometimes I'll give things to parents and to teachers. I'll teach the student how to do this and then give them resources to take with them into the classroom and reinforce with the teacher too, and sometimes parents, how can you do this at home? Because this takes a while. This is a skill that you have to kind of nurture and build over time for it to become more natural. But it is a great, and you don't really have, you don't have to have this kind of template. You can just use a piece of scratch paper or notebook paper or whatever you've got. This is another strategy that I use. And again, you don't really have to have the actual, the template necessarily. You could just draw 2 circles on a piece of paper and there you go. But this is something else that I use with students and myself sometimes because, we adults, we get overwhelmed. There's a lot going on, especially right now with the pandemic. We're managing a lot of things too. So a lot of times we focus a lot of our attention and energy on things that we have no control over. And that can be very overwhelming if we spend too much time on that. So I try to help students look at, well, let's just stop. Let's take a second. Let's look at what you can control and what you can't control. And then once we list those things, I really help the student focus more in on what they can control. And that makes you feel empowered and it makes you feel like you can move forward. So, and that's what we all want, so this is a good activity. Even I'll stop and do this very activity. Like sometimes when I'm like, oh, things are a little crazy right now and I need to just be grounded a little bit.
Okay. Support grieving students, what to say and what not to say. Being present and authentic is very important. Your presence says a lot. Talk less and listen more. Giving them an opportunity to talk, you ask less questions and just being there as a great listener. Sometimes silence is okay. It's okay to be silent and let the student or the person have their moment. Silence sometimes build a stronger relationship in their presence. Okay. Allow emotional expression and definitely demonstrate empathy. Sometimes we get empathy and sympathy confused. I always try to describe empathy as just imagining a big abyss, a hole, and your student or someone is down in that hole struggling to get out, and you jump in that hole with them to feel the struggle, to feel exactly the emotions or experience they're feeling. Is a great way to give an example of empathy, showing empathy during their time of grief. As adults, it's hard for us to deal with grief. It's hard for us to manage and cope and try to move forward with our everyday life. So just imagine our little friends who death, is a new experience for them when they do have the experience, and how they go through their emotions and how to put all the pieces back to the puzzle and put things together when they have lost a piece of their puzzle to a loved one or someone that was very dear to them. And we definitely must keep in mind that as for us as well as them, that there are 5 stages that we definitely go through during death. And those 5 stages can also be attributed to other stages in life that we go through. Sometimes people use those same stages when they go through a divorce, but also can be used during grief. And they are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and lastly, acceptance. So keep that in mind as working with your own or your students, that you may see them go through those various stages, but they are actually going through the process of grieving that person that was significant to them. That will actually conclude my section of the presentation, and Tanya will continue to go forward.
Thank you, Coretta.
You're welcome.
And this is just some tips from home. Like, it's just kind of a list. We could go on and on forever. I could make this list like really long, but here are some things to think about. To just help your child at home, taking turns. This could be taking turns sharing something positive that you're grateful for at dinner time. It could be taking turns at a board game on Friday nights, or taking turns picking out what you're going to have for dinner, or whatever it is. Teaching turn taking is such a great skill. It teaches so many things. Patience and problem solving and delayed gratification. All of those things are so important. Perspective taking, helping your child take on another person's perspective is really important. And there's several of these that kind of overlap, like movie night. Maybe have a movie night where each family member picks out a different movie to watch, and then maybe you're watching with your child and talking about, how do you think that character is feeling right now? What do you think that body language and her facial expression is? What do you think that means? Just to help, using books and movies are a great way to build those skills. Model flexibility. When something goes wrong, your child needs to see how you're handling it. That will, if you can be flexible, that's going to teach them to be flexible as well. Encourage connection. And I can't say enough about some real basic things that we tend to forget about when we're under a lot of stress, no matter how old we are. Nutrition, sleep, and physical activity. So important. And we often, if you think about it, times of major stress, what have we all as adults let slide off the plate? Oftentimes we don't eat as well. We do things like, we're on social media or whatever, way late, Netflix, late into the night, and we're not getting adequate sleep. Sleep is so important. There's a lot of other issues that pop up that we think that look like other things, but really can be just a sleep deficit. So I can't speak highly enough about sleep, sleep, sleep. If nothing else out of this whole presentation that you want to work on is trying to develop good sleep patterns for your family. And that's not always an easy thing to do. So that can sometimes be a bit of a task, but there's different ways we can do that. Cut those devices off a couple hours before bed, or at least an hour. Maybe have work on your lighting, work on maybe music or something that you can relax to at bedtime, things like that. All right, and this is just something I thought was really kind of cool to look, graphic that was cool to look at. Again, it sort of speaks to some of those same things. Some great activities to do with your child during quarantine. And, and here's the thing, it's a really important to know that quarantine fatigue is a real thing. It is such a real thing. It's a real thing for adults. It's a real thing for students. And so many of these strategies will work with whatever age you're looking at, elementary, middle, high, as adults too. But finding these strategies, not to forget that there are some strategies to stop and pause and to look at. It's very normal when we're having quarantine fatigue to feel heightened, to feel more feelings that are uncomfortable, things like anger and being irritable and being anxious. Maybe some behavior changes we might see, like changing of appetite, changing of sleep. Maybe motivation for school kind of takes a dip. Us adults will kind of have some of those same things too. Our motivation might dip. So it's important. Some of these strategies are really good for us too, no matter how old you are. So just taking a look at that for a second to and sometimes thinking about trying too many things at one time can be very, very overwhelming, and we're like, it's too much. Pick one or two things, to work on or to try out, just one or two. Just keep it easy, keep it simple. One or two things, try, work on those one or two things. And then, if you feel confident in those one or two things, and move on to something else that you add on. But don't get caught up in trying to try too many things at one time. All right, so another thing that's important is to, again, look at your own self-care, okay? That's important, because if you're feeling healthy and you're feeling good, then you're going to be able to be more available to your children as well. Same things goes for us as faculty as well. We need to take care of ourselves, because if we're healthy, we're going to be, healthy for your students, for your children as well. So think about your nutrition. How's your sleep going? If you think you're not getting at least 7 hours of sleep, or it's choppy sleep, or you're waking up and you're not feeling well rested, what kinds of things, I encourage you to look up some strategies for sleep. Email me. I'd be glad. I love to talk to people about sleep and things that you can do to work on that. Having realistic expectations. When you're in the middle of a pandemic, things, are not always going to be our 100% pre-COVID is not like the same 100% now. And so having realistic expectations, we have seasons in life. Each season does not have to look exactly like the one before it. Release that, let it go, be okay with that. Having boundaries, learning to say no to certain things, or to give yourself buffer room or white space between activities and events and things that you're needing to do or that are in your schedule. It's very, very important, especially during something like a pandemic, because we have decision fatigue. There's so many decisions we make in a day, and every single decision takes up space. It takes up energy. So when we have to think, just going to the store, do I wear a mask? Where's my mask at? What's the best time to go? Did I bring my hand sanitizer? Did I not? So there's a lot of extra decisions that we're having to make right now during the pandemic, and know that maybe you just don't have that capacity that you did like you did before the pandemic. So boundaries are very important. Physical activity, our brains just function so much better when we move. We got to move. It brings us endorphins and dopamine and serotonin, all these great things that really make us feel better. Physical activity is great. Limiting social media, sometimes, we can get so involved in that we spend a lot of time, it's gone, where we could have been using that time differently, and then we're all worked up, looking at social media or whatever. So try to find a nice limited amount of time that you allow yourself on that. It'll make you feel better. And then reminding yourself of what brings you joy. Don't forget those things. This is so important in taking care of yourself, mental health, whether it's reading a book or doing yoga or taking walks or sewing or whatever it might be. Don't forget that incorporating that into your schedule, what brings you joy. It's so, so, so very important. All right, I think that's it, guys.